Welcome back, everybody. Season 2, episode 37 of the Main Stand podcast. Mitchell, Josh, and Pat here to finish out the Premier League season. We're going to talk team of the season today. We've got some other kind of quick hitters. And then leading up to Championship Sunday, the final day of the Premier League season. Boys, how are we feeling?
City are champions again. I feel great.
Pat just won the league. You're asking him how he's feeling. Pat's
Yeah.
doing awesome.
I was going to let him fucking do the thing.
I mean, yeah. What a season it's been for Man City. It's been a great Premier League season all around. I think we're gonna hop right into team of the season probably. But yeah, I mean, it's just been a great season. Title race going pretty far, in. A lot of really good standout performances. Some new guys kind of coming into our team of the seasons. I think we're gonna have some fun debate today, guys.
Yeah, I feel like in the past the team of the season has kind of been cut and dry. In past seasons, it's been tough. Like there hasn't been a ton of debate to be had in certain areas. I think this year there, like Josh said, there were a lot of good players this year. Some really standout guys. Some teams that really overperformed. Some of their guys may sneak into some teams. So yeah, I'm excited. I think background for this team of the season is it's just our own individual teams of the season. I picked one, Josh picked one, Mitch picked one. We're gonna go through position by position, back to front, start and goal, go all the way to the forwards. No set formations, and I think one of us might be doing a 4-4-2 if I remember some of the pre-chat
I have a 4-4-2.
correctly.
I think this year tailors more to the midfield game than last year. Last year we were kind of set in stone with the 4-3-3s across the board. There's been a lot of different play this year, so I think the 4-4-2 really kind of invites the best debate this season.
I pivoted last minute, Mitch. I know you and I talked off air. I am in a 4-3-3 after all that chat. I did go back to the 4-3-3.
What did you go to, Pat?
I was in a 4-4-2. I went back to the 4-3-3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did some internal debate, and yeah, we'll get there when we get there.
Interesting.
So let's tuck right in. So main stand's team of the season, or the main stand members' individual teams this season. We'll start in goal. Josh, why don't you start us off? Who's your goalkeeper of the year?
Yeah, I took maybe some people think it's an obscure one. I've saw a couple names bounced around, but Alisson. I'm trying not to be Liverpool biased on this one. Liverpool obviously had an off year, but I think Alisson was a standout player, not only for Liverpool, but in the league. 14 clean sheets, which is good enough for second in the league, only behind De Gea. And one stat that really stood out to me about Alisson this year was his post-shot expected goals minus actual goals allowed. So basically, this kind of weighs like how successful he is at stopping shots. So he actually had a plus 10.1 on this. So expected goals basically minus goals allowed. To have plus 10 on that, I think is absolutely crazy. Pope is only at plus 0.3 and Ramsdale's minus 2. Those were my other two contenders. I think that kind of tells you all you need to know about the saves Alisson's been making this year. And he had one assist as well. That Man City goal, unforgettable. That's me. That's Alisson. I'd like to hear what you guys have to think, though.
Also fourth overall in saves.
Yeah.
With a leaky Liverpool defense. Not a bad shout.
The assist that binned Cancelo.
Sure.
In a way, thank you. Mitch, why don't you go? Share who you've got in goal.
Yeah, I had Brentford's David Raya. I think Raya, for what he did for that team, leading the league in saves with 152, 11 clean sheets. It's not like Brentford's fucking defense is polished by any means, but he took Brentford to a mid-table finish when we all had him in the bottom three. I think we definitely overlooked this Brentford team for what it's worth, but Raya definitely kept them in it.
We'll talk about how we felt about Brentford at, I guess, the end of the season when it's all kind of said and done. I guess it's my turn. I almost picked Raya. Raya was one that I was seriously debating on tossing in, but I actually had a name that was thrown out earlier. I had Nick Pope.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Pope is my guy. I don't have stats like Mitch and Josh do. I just went strictly off vibes for what I felt the best players were in each of the set positions. But Nick Pope was great. Newcastle had the best defense in the league, so fair enough. Maybe it wasn't all down to him, but I felt like he made a lot of key saves when he needed to. He was good in the net. He's Nick Pope, man. We saw how good Nick Pope was in the past for Burnley, and he showed it again this year for Newcastle. I think he was great in net, and for me, best keeper in the league this year.
Do we want to do honorable mentions by position, guys, or at the end?
Yeah, I think just a couple of names off the top. I would say just throw out like obviously David De Gea would be in my boat of honorable mentions for keeper of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, along with Aaron Ramsdale, I think Ramsdale had a pretty good year too. I think the thing that keeps Ramsdale out of my team of the season is I wasn't always impressed with Ramsdale in the big moments.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, aside from a couple of monster saves against Liverpool and Arsenal, he was or against Liverpool and Man City, sorry. Um, he was kind of at fault for a lot of drop points too. I think in the games against City, despite his saves, you could really say that he maybe came off his line a little too early for the De Bruyne goal or didn't command it enough in that fixture. And then he really did feel at fault for the second goal in the Brighton loss that ultimately lost them, took them out of the contention for the Premier League title. He was just shaky in weird moments in the league, and his distribution never like overly impressed me. I think having somebody as commanding as Saliba in front of him in a system that holds the ball a lot and doesn't really give him many opportunities to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of is why a lot of people look at him the way he does, or they did this season. I just was never, for me, that's what kept him out.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. I think those are mainly the goalies that would get a shout. The five we mentioned. We'll go to left back now, I guess. I think personally, I'll go first just because I think left back was the hardest one to pick for me because I don't think there was really a standout left back in the Prem this year. Zinchenko, I think, is a good shout, as well as Luke Shaw. I don't know if both of them had team of the season campaigns. I think Arsenal fans will tell you, how Zinchenko let them down late in the season with defensive lapses. I recall that Trent Alexander-Arnold nutmeg that gave us the equalizer in our game against them. So I went with Pervis Estupiñán from Brighton here. 6 goal contributions and 30 starts in the league. I think that's really good. He also had 85 shot creating actions, over 3 a game. When you look at a player like Mo Salah, he only averages like 3.7. So to do that from left back in a Brighton team, I think is good enough for me to get in my team of the season.
A Brighton team that also just ended up solidifying European football. So
Yes, sir.
That's a good shout.
Yeah, it's a good shout. Estupiñán was really impressive for me. Mitch, you can go ahead and share your left back, and then I'll share mine.
I think we have the same one. I, like Josh said, did not think Andy Robertson, Luke Shaw, or Zinchenko had a standout year or enough consistency throughout the year to warrant a team of the season shout. A player who slid over to the left and balled out, I thought, week in, week out, was Nathan Ake. I think he had a very, very solid year in the Premier League, and I think he filled that left back role better than the true left backs, personally.
Completely agree. I think Nathan Ake is the reason we saw Jack Grealish play as well as he did, being a good defensive figure down City's left, added a lot of balance to a title-winning side. Not to mention, in my humble opinion, I think he's the best one-on-one defender in the league, bar none. And, often tasked with some of the more difficult players. On his way back from London, he had to let Saka out of his pockets, and then he did a really good job against Mo Salah in that game at the Etihad against Liverpool. And then you look at his reverse compatriot in Cancelo. He got cooked. He got skinned by a lot of different fullbacks. Now he added a lot to that City defense, and yeah, Nathan Ake as well was my pick for left back this year. It was between him and Botman. We can go right into honorable mentions here. I thought Botman was unbelievable for Newcastle too. Another natural center back, made I think over 28 starts from the left back position for Newcastle this year. I thought Botman was amazing. I just think Newcastle as a defensive unit were so solid that there wasn't like one. Well, there was one standout defender, but we'll get to him later. And for me, Botman was really good, but I think he was kind of a product of the system.
Sure. We'll go to center back pairings, I guess, next. I don't think we need to take like a left center back or anything like that.
No.
I guess I'll go first here, and I kind of want to hear Pat's take on this because he has another player in this pairing for me, Ruben Diaz. I mean, Pat's been raving about him all year, and then I have Botman as well. I put him at center back. It's kind of a minuscule detail. Doesn't really matter. He made starts at both positions. Both of them are kind of the anchors, I would say, and the two best defenses in the league. So there's not a ton of conversation there for me. Van Dijk misses out again. Will Saliba, I think, is right there, who you guys I know you are going to mention in this one. But I think the center back pairings, you could go a few different ways and be pretty flawless and respectful, I would say, to a variety of different combos.
Yeah, I would agree. But before I share mine, I'll just a couple of honorable mentions, and then I'll share mine because there are a couple of guys who I think we'd be remiss not talking about going through. Yeah, Schär had a great year for Newcastle. He was an honorable mention for me. Martinez, despite kind of being outclassed in some situations, did have a pretty good year. I think he's United's best defender, and I think ignoring him and how good he was in a lot of the season would be a little remiss. And Lewis Dunk as well. I think he had an unbelievable year for Brighton. For my center back pairing, I have Ruben Diaz, just like Josh, and I have Saliba. I think City really missed Ruben Diaz the minute he comes back from injury. We look like a whole different side at the back. He's a leader. He's a future captain for City. For me, he's the best center back in the league. And I think that, I think he, like Josh said, he's the anchor for one of the best defenses in the league. And then Saliba on the other side, I think he can make a case for best defender in the league. I think everything we loved about Virgil van Dijk from like a physical aspect, Saliba encompasses a lot of that. I'm not saying he's as good as Van Dijk, but I think he has a lot of similar qualities that we saw in like the pre-injury Van Dijk, commanding in the air. He's a leader as well. Pretty good with the ball at his feet. He's a confident one-on-one defender. He's good in those physical battles with other commanding center forwards as well. I think Saliba had an unbelievable year, and I think it really shows how important he was to that Arsenal team because the minute he gets injured, they really start leaking goals in the back half of the season. He changes that Arsenal defense much like Ruben Diaz changes the City defense, and for me, that's why him and Diaz are my two.
Yeah, and I think I don't really need to beat a dead horse. My center back pairing was Schär and Saliba. I thought Schär, in my opinion, was the better center back out of the Botman Schär combination. 206 recoveries, 187 duels won, and he had an unbelievable amount of passing out of the back as well. So I thought Schär took the spot for me.
Yep. Like I said, I think there's a variety of different ways you could go. One also, Pat mentioned a few honorable mentions. One that just kind of crossed my mind that I think kind of had an under the radar good year. Ben Mee at Brighton. Talk about a guy that left Burnley, made a huge difference at the team he went to. Ben Mee.
The pairing of Mee and Dunk has been mucho good.
We'll wrap it back around. Mitch, why don't you lead us off with a right back?
Right back, I feel like we all have one, and it's Kieran Trippier. This man was a man possessed this year. Unbelievable asset to this Newcastle side, and boy, did he produce.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't have much else to say. Kieran Trippier's my right back too, and I feel the same way as Mitch does about the guy. I think he was really the standout player in Newcastle's back four. Unbelievable from a dead ball. Just as good defensively. What a player he is to be that, like, what felt like almost marquee signing, that first Newcastle, like, oh shit, they signed Trippier, come over from Atletico to join this new project and really be like one of their main men. Great year. Really big part of Newcastle securing top four.
For sure. 7 assists. I mean, the stats, I think, for Trippier speak for themselves. Everyone can kind of look at those, but when you look at the other right backs in the Premier League, there wasn't a ton of competition either. Look at the Trent Alexander-Arnolds who have won it in years prior. Diego Dallo at Man United, I guess, was their right back for most of the year. There just wasn't really another standout one for me. I'll move it on. I'll have Pat start this one. I guess, do you want to do the midfield trio, or do you want to start off with like a CDM?
Well, Mitch has two midfielders, so we could just share our midfields.
Yep, let's do that
completely.
Yep,
and go from there. Yeah, so my midfield three in the defensive mid spot, I have Rodri. Listen to any other episode, and you'll hear how I feel about Rodri. Best defensive midfielder in the world, best defensive midfielder in the league. Very rarely puts a foot wrong. So I don't have enough high praise for him. I don't think a midfielder comes close to him in his position. I think Casemiro was really good, and I think you could say he was a transformative thing or piece for Man United, but availability is important too. And the amount of red cards that Casemiro got so early took him out of so many games. I think he missed like 7 or 8 games due to suspension in the league, if I'm not mistaken, because he had that like 3 or 4 game ban for one of his red cards. Great player. I just don't think that he's as good as Rodri. But it's just opinions. And then the other two, I have Odegaard and De Bruyne. I think Odegaard was unreal this year. I think he was Arsenal's best player. And I think that De Bruyne kind of turned it on a little bit later in the season. But 16 assists, 7 goals. He's there when it matters. In my opinion, he's one of the best big game players in the league. GA against almost all the top sides this season. He was there when it matters, and I think that's the most important thing you need out of a player. He's cementing his place as one of the best midfielders we've ever seen in this league. I just don't think there was a attacking midfielder truly better than De Bruyne when it's all said and done at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'll go next just because I had the exact same trio as Pat. When you're doing a 4-3-3 setup, I'm not sure there's even a question mark next to any 3 of those players' names. They were just so standout, particularly Kevin De Bruyne, like Pat said, later in the year. I think we all kind of, appreciated it a little bit more what he's doing, and I think we're going to look back in 5 years' time and realize we were watching, the premier player in this era of talent. He's just unplayable. And then Odegaard, I mean, what a job kind of not only doing good in this Arsenal side, but also leading them at a very young age too. So I think that's pretty impressive. And obviously, the creativity he brings on the ball and, shooting range, that he put it on full display this year. So I think he has to make the team.
Yeah, he's been unreal. Mitch, go ahead and share your midfield. I believe it's only a 2 for you. So
yeah, it is Rodri and Odegaard in my midfield. I think Rodri, kind of the consistency throughout the year and what he brought to that CDM role for City was phenomenal. And then everything you touched on Odegaard and more. He's captaining this young Arsenal side, and while they did kind of fold at the end of the season, he did a lot to keep them pushing and hold them together. And I respect that. And then I guess kind of swinging midfield wingers, left mid, I took Rashford, and right mid I took Bukayo Saka. I think their end of the season especially speaks for themselves. Rashford more so. His run after the World Cup has been immense. And Saka really, I think, improved a lot over last year with his consistency of play. I think, 11 or 12 assists on the season.
I think he's on like 13 goals, 11 assists, something like that, 20, 25, 26 GA.
Yeah.
He's playing out of his mind, and I think I'd be remiss to not have him in my team.
Funny you say end of the season for Saka. He's actually on like a 5-game no GA spree to close the season out. But I know what you mean. I think Saka's been really good too. When we get to the forwards, you'll understand why. I do have a question for you before we move on from the midfield, Mitchell.
Yes, sir.
So Josh and I both had De Bruyne in our teams. What is it about either Odegaard or Rodri that maybe puts them in your midfield over De Bruyne, or is it because you think that your forwards, both of them needed to be there, and what they did this year maybe eclipsed what De Bruyne did?
I think my forwards maybe eclipse that, and I think De Bruyne did run the midfield for City and produce a lot. I think the link up between him and Erling Haaland was very important for City's success this year, and I think just giving a shout to a player like Odegaard for the season that he had with Arsenal is necessary. And I think what Rodri did defensively, allowing the rest of City to really move the ball forward a lot quicker and open up play was why I took Rodri. De Bruyne was an easy third honorable mention for the.
Oh, that all sounds great to me. I was just curious how you were feeling, and I think it's only right you start us off with your forwards. Who's leading the line for your team of the season?
Erling motherfucking Haaland. This big, tall, blonde bastard came over to the Premier League and broke records. I mean, he filled the role that City's been needing filled for a very long time, and he flourished. Was there when he was needed, and I don't think there's much else you can say about it. The other player I have in my my forward pairing is Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney, it's kind of hilarious the fact that we'll miss him for the next 8 months to a year. Don't gamble. It's bad for your health and your professional life. But
if you do, maybe just don't bet on the sport you play professionally. Just a thought.
Might be smart. My computer's giving me issues here. Hold on. Ivan Toney, what, 20 goals this year?
Something like that. A lot. He hit a lot of goals.
In the league. And for what it's worth, for the same reasons I kind of gave for Raya, he was imperious for this Brentford team that we all really overlooked. 736 passes for a forward, so he's still distributing the ball. Only 4 assists, so that speaks volumes to what we're seeing up front when he's bagging goals at the rate he is. 0.61 per match throughout the season. No, I think he deserves a shout in the team of the season.
I appreciate that, Mitch. I don't think that me or Pat have this guy either. So a player that didn't make it at any of our 3 team of the seasons that I think could compete with Toney for that spot, and I want to get your thoughts on. Harry Kane did score 28 goals this season.
The quietest 28 goal performance.
It was a quiet 28 goals.
No, I thought Kane at first, but when I really thought about it and we look at the table, Tottenham are in 8th. Brentford are in 9th. I think Ivan Toney's 22 goals is
20.
a lot more important
20
than Harry Kane's 28.
Can we get a stat check on pens?
The Premier League app doesn't give penalty versus non-penalty goals.
Pat can okay. Harry Kane had 5 penalties.
So 23.
Okay, so down to 23. Ivan Toney, just give me a quick 3 seconds here. Ivan Toney had 14 penalty kicks of 20.
Love it.
That's a ton of penalty kicks, man, for 1 year.
14?
14 of his 20 goals were penalty kicks.
How many of those
did
he win?
Never mind. I stand corrected. I was looking at non-penalty goals. Sorry.
14 non-penalty.
6.
I was gonna say, holy.
I thought the system was broken there for a second.
And I was trying to play it like he won all of them. So hey,
that's how it goes. Pat, why don't we get into your front 3?
All right. My front three. I'm going to talk about the big man first because he plays for me. Erling Haaland is very obviously leading my line. 36 league goals. Not only that, but 8 assists from the front. So just for peace of mind for everyone to just keep this statistic, because it's just a stat. The numbers don't lie. It's just a number. That's more assists than Paul Scholes ever got in a single campaign for United. Just saying. Just saying. But no, you can't say enough positive things about Erling Haaland. He came to the Premier League. He smashed every goal record imaginable. He's going to continue to do that every single year he's here. I would not be surprised if he broke his own record next year. He's a freak of nature, and I'm thrilled that he plays for us. And then my wingers, on the right, I have Saka, and on the left, I have Martinelli. I think Arsenal's wing pairing was just the best wing pairing in the league. I think the production maybe died off a little bit at the end of the year, but the whole team died at the end of the year. I think Martinelli has one of the best work rates I've seen out of a forward in the league. I think the way he gets back, he gets forward, he runs at his defenders, he's super positive on the ball. I really like that about him, and I think Saka's probably one of the best young players in the league right now. I think he's absolutely unbelievable, man. On his day, he's unplayable, and he had such a good season this year. Double-digit goals and assists for Arsenal. They need to do everything they can to keep him locked down to a long-term contract if they want to continue to see success, because I think he's so important to them moving forward, and he was so important to them this year. Before I move on, I do have a couple honorable mentions as well, just because I want to get them in there. No, I actually don't need to say anything. They've all been talked about. Josh is going to talk about one of them. Yeah, so that's my front three. Josh, go ahead and do yours, because you're going to mention one of the guys I have in my honorable mention, so just talk about him.
So on the left, I have Rashford, who Mitch mentioned, just an unreal run after the World Cup. Scored .69 goals plus assists per 90 minutes this year. Really, really good rate. And just, I think, kind of a bounce-back season for him at United. Last year, he wasn't doing that hot. So Haaland, I don't need to beat a dead horse there. The numbers speak. And on the right, I have Mo Salah. Again, I think this guy, the numbers speak for him. I think at the beginning of the year, we heard a lot of talk about this guy's not living up to the new contract, everything like that. But boy, did he turn it on kind of after that first couple of months. Only player in the world not named Erling Haaland or Mbappe that has over 30 goals plus assists in their domestic league this season. Scores goals at an insane rate. Creatively, I think he's been great this year too. Getting a lot of assists, and he's done well defensively too. I think he's had to cover for kind of a very bad season defensively for Trent Alexander-Arnold at times. You can see it in Salah's stats. I mean, he's accumulated more tackles than almost any other season he's been at Liverpool, I think, besides the first one. So yeah, I took him over Saka, not as a slight to Saka. I think he's had a great year. Improved, so important to that Arsenal team. I just don't know how you can leave a guy with 30, goals and assists off the board. And he is one of those players, I feel like, and I'm willing to admit this, where he's not necessarily world class for 90 minutes of the game, but I don't think he has to be. He's not as quite Diogo Jota-like, but as long as he gets me numbers, gets me goals, gets me wins, which, I mean, he was the guy for Liverpool in front of Alisson this year. I'm going to be okay with him kind of playing shit in terms of dribbling or passing, because I don't think he was the best at taking on defenders like one-on-one this year, but I think that the end product was there for me.
Any other honorable mentions? Because I have one that I'm surprised nobody's brought up.
I think there's probably two wingers you could go for. I think Miguel Almiron is one. He had 11 goals, and Jack Grealish too. Jack Grealish should be there.
And another honorable mention forward for me. I think you can't ignore the difference between it's not even pre-World Cup and post-World Cup. It's pre-João Cancelo and post-João Cancelo, Jack Grealish.
Yeah.
I think him commanding that left side really did completely change his game. Phil Foden, too, had a sneaky great year, 11 goals in the league. I think he's on like 16 GA, and he's apparently having a bad season. So, when he's, not injured and having surgery, he's a great player. I think his beginning half of the year, if he could have kicked on after the World Cup, if he didn't get injured and stuff like that, I think we'd be having a different conversation. But for now, just an honorable mention on a good player who hopefully can stay fit for a full season next year.
So my honorable mention up top also, shouts out to Callum Wilson for what he did at Newcastle.
True, yeah.
In his 30 apps, he had 18 goals and 5 assists, 5 big chances created. I think he had a really quiet, solid year in a Newcastle team that fucking works their asses off across the board.
Before we get into managers, guys, is there anyone that kind of piqued your interest this year that you'll give like an way too early prediction for to make the team of the season next year? Any interesting names you want to throw out?
I think we watch Mitoma. I think we definitely watch that space next year. I think all the Brighton guys. McAllister, I think, is definitely a player to watch next year, especially if he gets his big move to a big club. I think Bruno Guillermes, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Bruno G at Newcastle. I think you watch him as well next year, especially if Newcastle go out and really strengthen and really make a run at what should be trying to fight for a title. If they can finish in the top 3 this season, you'd think if they strengthen next year, it's only right they're going to do it. And then lastly, I think Jack Grealish for City. I think if Cancelo doesn't come back and the system stays similar to the way it is now, there's no reason he can't kick on and be the player that everybody wants him to be, which is the guy who, is getting 9 goals and 14 assists. There's no reason he can't put up De Bruyne-like numbers if he plays as confident as he did this back half of the year for a full 38.
I like Alexander Isak, too, at Newcastle. I think he's a good shout. He really had some games this year that was like, wow, and he's young.
I have 2. First one is the homer pick. I am going to give it to Darwin Núñez. I think
good shout.
For the amount of woodwork he hit this year, give him a full season in the Liverpool shirt. I think he's going to have a great season next year, especially in this transformative system that we're kind of leaning into. And then kind of a sleeper pick, Eze at Crystal Palace.
Nice.
Should he stay, I think Eze could have a really big year next season.
Heard some Liverpool transfer interest there, so you never know.
Maybe it's in a red shirt.
Yeah. Let's talk about managers real quick, guys. I'll toss it right back to Mitch for that one. Mitch can start us off with the manager of the season.
So I think with today's result, my manager got solidified. De Zerbi had a great year, I think, bringing this Brighton team to where they are, getting a European some European competition. I really am liking what I'm seeing out of a Brighton team we didn't kind of give 2 shits about at the beginning of the year. I was impressed. I mean, it's not a title winning season. It's not like he has the greatest assets, but Lewis Dunk and and company were able to march into a Europa League spot. So I think that's a phenomenal bit of work out of that Brighton side with so many kind of transfers out after last season.
I had De Zerbi as well. I think when you look at not only his talent pool but his roster turnover, and I know he didn't, Potter was gone and stuff, but he still inherited a team that just was fresh off the losses of Yves Bissouma, Mark Cucurella. I'm missing Ben White last year as well.
Yep.
To think of the players they've lost, Neil Mopai as well left last year. So a ton of turnover. So this team, you'd think they would be like barren, like down to the bones. And the way he's really kind of I would say, shaped this team around his style of play, mentality. I think is really, really cool to do that in such a short amount of time. He's a big manager. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets a look at a big club in the next year.
Looking back on it, it really is that Serie A kind of roots that you can see coming out. It's a gritty team. It's fighting for every point, and my God, did they take it to the end to be able to earn their spot in Europe.
Yeah, and the recruitment's already starting again for them again. And they get James Milner. What a great signing for them. And João Pedro from Watford, and
Yep.
There's another guy as well, pretty talented. So big things from them next year. Pat?
I am going to give a couple honorable mentions and also tell you why I'm skeptical about De Zerbi before I do so. Because #embrace debate.
Sure.
I think De Zerbi is a great coach. I think he had a great year. However, I think I am more impressed with the Brighton system than I am the coach. I am more impressed with the framework that's in place for no matter who coaches that team to succeed.
Yep.
We have seen Brighton coaches, Graham Potter, be very good coaching Brighton and then move and be exposed as maybe actually a bad coach. I think it's more important that Brighton as a whole are such a well-run organization. You just talked about the incredible scouting that they do. They brought in a ton of players, so De Zerbi had the ability to do what he needed to do. I think De Zerbi is very good, and I think I need to see. I'll see him in Europe next year and be a little more sold. But I think the Brighton system is very good, and it's very hard not to succeed when you're a coach with a decent tactical mind, with the network that is Brighton Football Club. That being said, full credit to them. I'm really happy they made Europe. I like the team a lot, but that's just why, for me, he's not my manager of the year. Other honorable mentions, I do just want to make sure get their recognition on this podcast. Gary O'Neill over at Bournemouth. That club was pegged for relegation. Everybody was like, those motherfuckers are going down. They spend absolutely no money, and they're in 15th place, and they're going to be in the Prem next year. And I think you have to give Gary O'Neill a little bit of credit for keeping this bright Bournemouth team in the league on a shoestring budget. And that to me is impressive, so I want to give credit there. Andre Silva, another team that people were like, they are going down. Fulham are getting relegated. A lot of people had Fulham in between like 17th and 19th place at the beginning of the season. They're in 9th. They're going to finish above
Chelsea.
Several teams that people had, fighting for Europe. They're gonna finish above a lot of really good clubs, and I think that's a testament to Andre Silva, what he did there, and how good he got that Fulham team playing. Everybody was like, Fulham were going down. Oh, it's just the championship. Da 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 da. He took that same exact style of play, brought it to the Prem, and got them a top half finish, and that's super super impressive. So, those are my honorable mention managers. My manager of the season is Unai Emery, because Villa looked like they were relegation bound.
Yep.
Before he took over, they were like winless in like 8 or 9 or some shit like that. Again, I don't have stats. I just have vibes. And they're going to finish in 7th. They're just outside Europa League. He's going to get them into Conference League, and they're transformed under Emery. He took a sinking ship and pulled it into another top half finish. And yeah, you can say that he has a lot at his disposal, but Gerrard had a lot at his disposal, and he was going to get them relegated. And then Unai Emery came in, immediately righted the wrongs, and they've looked like a brand new team ever since he came in and took over that team. And for me, that really solidifies him as my manager of the season. Also, we'd be remiss not to just say shout out Arteta. People thought like maybe 5th place, and instead he stumbled into a title race for 36 match weeks. So yeah, credit where credit's due. I think Arteta had a really good year too. I think the pressure ultimately kind of got to him. It's his first time doing it without Pep on his wing. And yeah.
Did we mention we talked about Thomas Frank earlier? I think he's another one kind of in the middle of the table that probably needs a shout. And then I don't know if Eddie Howe got a mention in there as well. I mean, Newcastle were just a relegation side last year.
Made a couple big signings and put together a fucking phenomenal defense and a fucking great midfield and players that can get the ball in the back of the net. They brought in the right pieces, and Eddie Howe coached a great Newcastle side this year. I also think Ten Hag deserves a shout for what it's worth. Like,
oh, here we go.
For what it's worth, if we think back just 8-9 months and think of how much shit we were giving this United side, they've outperformed everything we thought they would do and more. Aside from a few absolute blunders to start the year, I think he settled in fine and coasted United to a fine season.
I'm gonna clip that.
Go for it. Shout out Mark Goldbridge.
Shout out Mark Goldbridge one time. I don't know if I would have Ten Hag in mind, but hey, hashtag embrace debate.
Hey, boy, I gotta throw a random fucking United shout in there. It's better than Paul Pogba last year.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That was that still might be one of the funniest social media interactions we've ever had on this podcast.
Don't come at my neck on Christmas ever.
Okay, boys.
I will say, just to keep the debate going for just a second longer. For me, the only reason Eddie Howe, because I think that was the only serious shout that was given. Eddie Howe. Sorry, Mitch, not your Ten Hag, but for me, with what they spent, what they had at their disposal coming into the season, a full preseason under Howe, we kind of all had them around where they were, between like 6th and 4th. They outperformed a little bit, but ultimately I think this Newcastle team was kind of expected to be a pretty good side.
No, you and Josh,
if they'd like won the league, then yeah, I'd probably be saying Eddie Howe should be manager of the year, or like even finish second, like if they were fighting for the title all year. But
I think they were what impressed me more about him was how tough they were to play. I think his tactics were really good. But yeah, I get what you're saying too.
That is a good shout. I do agree with you. Ultimately, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. But I think there were people who did more, quote unquote, with a lot less. Which is why I'm not going to sit here and fight for Pep either.
Yeah,
we were supposed to win the league, and we did.
That's the team of the season, boys. We have Premier League finishing this weekend. We'll be at the Portland Zoo. We have FA Cup the weekend after. European finals the week after. Promotion playoffs this Saturday. Soccer's wrapping up, guys. Bundesliga ends this weekend.
Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, what a finish it's going to be.
Dortmund and Bayern play at the same time on the same day.
Yeah, it's going to be hectic. We'll have end of season awards coming out, Champions League final reaction and preview, everything you guys are going to need for the end of the year, and then we'll take our summer break and be back again. We're going to Ibiza. Yeah.
My ass will be in the thick of it for the next month.
Yeah, Pat's going to go through it, but we're going to make sure we capture every moment for you guys. Like, share, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Any final comments, boys?
What a season.
Up the Blues.
Deuces.